Wonderful. It is great to see both of you, Jeremy and Eve, and also welcome Lisa, who's going to be doing some ASL interpreting for us as well. For those of you, we just moved from backstage to on stage, and there was a countdown timer that just makes me think of ringing in the new year. And so it is not the new year, but this is the beginning of another session in this full day conference, and I'm really happy to be joined here today by Dr. Eve Shapiro, who's the Chief Knowledge Officer at Beyond 12, and comes to us from Berkeley, California, and Dr. Jeremy Rochelle, the Executive Director of Digital Promise, who comes to us from Washington, D.C., and wanted to just sort of invite us into what is going to be an informal conversation over the next, 45 minutes. And we'll talk a little bit about the shape of that. And I'm Gabriel Rhoads, a Senior Advisor at Project Evident, and I'm just here to moderate and facilitate and learn along with all of you from both Eve and Jeremy. And so what we're welcoming you all in the audience and Eve and Jeremy into this conversation today is about AI for evaluation and insights, from models to drive program improvement. And so we're going to have this conversation about evaluation, about insights, but also about evidence in general as well. And just really appreciate the two speakers today, and looking forward to a rollicking good conversation. Folks online, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A feature or in the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to chat for about 30 minutes. We're going to make some space for about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. After that, we're going to step off the stage, and then you can find your speakers in lounge rooms, in digital lounges, where you can actually have one-on-one conversations if a question comes up for you that really befits that moment where you go up to the front of the room after a panel and have a conversation with the speaker. So an invitation to engage with our speakers in any of those ways. All right, that's enough of what my daughter calls the talking about it. So now let's have the conversation. And just wanted to, start with a general conversation that really was the beginning of what we did when we prepped, which is just an opener about evaluation, and we'll define this a little bit more as we go, right? But what is an evaluation in the past that you were happy to be part of, or one that inspires you? And so just an invitation to talk a little bit about evaluation in general. Either of you wants to go first, go for it.
Eve, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for that great intro, Gabriel. Always the evaluations that I've loved being part of are the ones that find lots of big impact, surprise you along the way with something that you thought was true, and you find out the outcome is true, but the way that the things that matter to get there are different. But I have to say, in the last year, I've been working on this large formative evaluation, and the way it's working is so fundamentally different. It's much less of a waterfall where we come up with a learning agenda with hypotheses, and then we put in place the pilots to test them, and then we have to wait a while, and we do the data collection, and then we analyze. But right now we're at this place where we've been able to build the infrastructure for the data gathering and the insights and analysis. And suddenly this cycle between piloting something, learning from it, adjusting the program model itself, and learning again is so much quicker that we have been able to unearth insights that I think were just out of reach before, because you would always get to the end of the evaluation and you'd be like, oh, I have all these questions. We thought it worked like this. Now we see that it doesn't, but there's no time or budget left to figure out what actually is going on. And that it's magic here. It really is this ability to iterate that feels really magical. And I'm enjoying that a lot.
Eve, that was so sublime, that what you just said. that your Wi-Fi just dropped for a
Oh,
second,
okay.
but you're
I'll
back
check
with
on
us,
that
and
for
that was
you.
absolutely lovely. I do think that opportunity to sort of get that infrastructure in place and be able to learn an ongoing way, I love that. But Jeremy, what are you picking up on that? And what do you add?
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it with Eve about infrastructure because how many people want to talk about infrastructure for doing evaluation better? But I do want to answer your question a little, Gabrielle. Yeah, I resist thinking of myself as an evaluator, never
Mhm.
have. I'm a learning scientist. I like to design things that will help students learn really important and difficult topics. But then I kind of want to know, is it working? And I don't want
Mhm.
to know just like, does it work? I want to know, how does it work? What's working about? What can we improve? And so thinking about a project that did that, there was one I was part of 2006 to 2008 that looked at a technology that provided visual representations to students, moving visual representations, dynamic ones for mathematics. And we did find, like Eve was talking about, well, it's exciting when you find a whopping effect. And we did find a really strong effect that children, in this case, it was all over the state of Texas, could more deeply learn the kind of mathematics that's on the National Assessment of Educational Progress when they had these interactive visual representations coupled with curriculum, of course, and teacher professional development. It's never the technology by itself.
Mm.
And what was great about the Scaling SimCalc project, that's what it was called, is we had a big budget. And so we could afford a lot of graduate students and a lot of co-researchers at universities. And so we could peel the onion back and look at all the insights about how learning was happening. And some of the things we saw were really surprising. One of the most basic ones is we were looking at some of the classrooms that generated the biggest gains, and there wasn't a dominant success model. There were different ways to be a successful teacher with this technology. Honestly, we didn't expect that. We had always tested it in smaller numbers of classrooms and had seen one dominant model. It was a really important finding because it would enable more teachers to be successful with this approach, but keeping to how they like to run their classrooms. So I like when evaluation um, has a big message, when we can look like a fractal and peel apart all the layers of something, and when we can learn something we didn't expect.
So I love this, and well, I'm also a nerd for this type of thing too. So just naming that. But the two things that you just came up with that I'm just gonna park and bring back a little bit later. But like the infrastructure that's required for, and then Jeremy, what you're adding, that ability to sort of peel the onion and think about insights as well as just big E evaluation. All right.
Mhm.
I want to turn to evidence for a moment, but I wanted to actually invite both of you just to talk about what you talk about when you talk about evaluation. And I think I stole big E from Eve, actually. I think that was your word, right? But what do we mean by evaluation? We don't have to get into a methods chat for the next 30 minutes, but like, what do we mean by this? And then I want to back it up and talk about evidence writ large. But Eve, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, what I was taught as a young social scientist was big E, right? Formal, time intensive, run by an external set of researchers, sort of full scope, program as a whole impact assessment or formative assessment. And that has its place, and it's often required from many of our organizations to demonstrate impact. But I think the most important work, the most exciting work is little e evaluation. That's data gathering and analysis, right? Informal, ongoing, but most importantly, embedded into the daily work of an organization so that you are always learning, testing, refining, learning again. And that is the place where evaluation becomes something that's not imposed on programs, but is something that is generative from the program itself and able to really drive innovation and drive impact in a real sense, I think, for organization and for the folks that we are honored to support.
Well, and driving an impact is a great thing to pick up on. Um, like I said, I'm not really an evaluator in how I think of myself. I like evaluators. And one of the things I like about evaluators is they're systems thinkers. And they're trying to think about all the factors that either contribute to the success of what we're trying, whatever it is, or that block it, and maybe block it in certain circumstances, but not others. And so I think of myself as a model builder. Like, I want to model all these factors.
Mhm.
And if I have a really good model, then I can give really great advice to school district leaders about what they're going to need to do to be successful with this new approach, whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot about logic models, which is laying out the presumptions of how we're going to go from the things we can control as input to some of the processes that we might have influence over, but how something's used in a classroom. And then we want to get those outcomes at the right-hand side of that logic model. And I think of evidence against the logic model. I think of it's a process of gathering evidence, not just about the thing all the way to the right. That is, did we get that big, exciting outcome, student learning up, woohoo? But also evidence for how we got there. Were those inputs used, or were some of them not used and we still got the input? Well, maybe those inputs weren't as important as they thought they are. Were the mediating processes the ones we expected? Or, as I was telling the story, did teachers find a different way of using the same resource that was equally good? And so I think of building evidence throughout every step of that logic model. So now at the end of the day, at the end of evaluation, what we've got is we have a model of how something works to produce outcomes, and we have evidence to explain why we think that model is right.
Yeah, I love that, Jeremy, and especially this honing on the how. Sometimes I think big E evaluation becomes just about measuring the impact or demonstrating impact. But the place where there's real meat is in the how, right? And discerning how things are having the effect they have so that we can amplify, so that we can adjust, so that we can account for threats to that, et cetera. Yeah.
And as a person who's studied technology, it's been my whole career studying technology in school and trying to figure out what are the effective uses. The how is so important because technology is never the direct cause of improved learning. There are always teachers, there are always curricula, there is always school leadership. I'm pointing to the system factors again, but when we fail to talk about the how, we're also giving a misleading story that the technology is somehow like a pill a child could swallow. If they swallow the pill, they're going to learn. And I've been around this for a lot of years now. I have not seen any technology where that's the mechanism. You just take it and you're going to learn. It's always involves teachers. It always involves these other system components.
And nuance, right? I mean, we did a lot of work to evaluate a set of predictive models that we were using to help coaches identify which students needed more support.
Yep.
And we could see that those models helped our coaches make more informed decisions. But we didn't understand a lot about the how. And when we dug in and we really tried to articulate through qualitative research, actually, what mattered most, what we found is that the predictive models weren't writ large important for coaches, that they mattered really intensely in some moments and not others. So in this case, our coaches really needed those predictive insights when they had not yet met with their students, before they had a chance to build relationship, or for students who were slow to connect. Those rich insights were incredibly valuable, but they declined in importance as the relationship grew. So that was really able to guide us in how we surfaced these insights to our coaches and when, so that they could be informative and not distracting.
Yeah, I love that. And it fits another evaluation that I was excited to be part of, which was a technology used to help students when they're doing their homework. But importantly, it gave a report to the teacher on what problems students had struggled with on last night's homework. And when we're talking about the how, one of the things we learned in this project is we asked the question, how did teachers change their homework review routine when this technology was used? Is there any change? Are they doing the same thing? And we found something really surprising and exciting. We found that in the average math homework review, it's about 20 minutes long. before using this technology, teachers would cover about 10 problems. It goes really fast, 10 problems in about 20 minutes, about 2 minutes a problem. They went through them. Actually, it was less than 20 minutes. It was more like 13 to 15. Yeah, that I'm remembering correctly. But after using the technology, it gave them a report of which were the problems of, say, the 20 assigned for homework, which were the ones students had the most difficulty with. And the teachers were zooming right in on those, and they were going in depth. And they were discussing some of the wrong answers and why students came up with those wrong answers. So while the quantitative effect was that students learned more, they learned more math in the course of a year, the qualitative effect seems super important. The teachers were spending more time discussing the right homework problems in depth. And like those findings mean so much because they tell us the benefit to teachers is not just productivity at this thing graded homework, it's that it helps them really serve their students better by focusing on where they can help.
So you've been moving us into this. I'm gonna take your invitation of little E, Eve, right? From like large. I was like, what was the first thing that you used to define big E evaluation was big, right? Like it's heavy. It's not built into the ongoing process of an organization. It doesn't like embed this kind of evaluative thinking, to steal from what you were talking about, Jeremy, into what is ongoing, right? And so we were riffing before this session about the word evidence. And over at Project Evident, we often describe evidence as just data plus analysis to support decision making, right? And which is a maybe overly quick way to say what both of you are saying about how do we actually surface the insights and the check our assumptions along the way to these larger outcomes, right? And so a big validation study is still important. Experimentation and causal and causal evaluation important. But what you're pushing at is what might be possible when we have access to information along the way in a high velocity, embedded, right? This is really interesting. I wanted to just throw a question to both of you about what's possible now, given using a tech platform to be able to surface that. Like, how are you seeing this, evaluation in this space perhaps be more useful, right? And so you're talking about the usefulness of evidence that you're generating. This is very exciting. What's possible given what you're seeing with the technology platforms or the flow of data that you're working with? Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
All right, I'm getting some nods. Take it away.
Now, I'm happy to start on this one, and I just want to make two contrasts. Like my career doing this stuff has been 30, 35 years of it, and it's a big change over the course of that. And one of those changes is when we started, you pretty much had to ship everything to the school to try the thing, and you would send people to schools
Like
to
ship,
date back out.
like FedEx pack you.
Exactly. It's literally FedEx boxes. We had rooms of them and people whose job it was to pack things into the boxes, including little gifts for the students, little pencils and other things. It was a very manual process of shipping the intervention, whatever it was, workbooks, whatever, into the school, and then giving them FedEx labels to ship us the data back. Okay. That was very expensive and slow and error prone. And you had even more people to try to squeeze the error out of it. So, super people intensive. My work is with technology, and we have so much of what kids are doing is on technology platforms these days. And the technologies are collecting data constantly. And a big part of my career in the last 5 years is how can we leverage the data that's automatically collected, intrinsic to these platforms, to learn how we can improve students' experience. And there's a lot of work to do there, but the exciting thing is the idea of less intrusive, less labor intensive data collected on a platform. And I want that data to do both things for me. I want to know about the outcomes, but I also want to learn about the learning process because these data are fine-grained. Like, for example, every wrong answer a kid gives on the way to solving a problem, or even every problem-solving step. Or if it's AI, every exchange they're having with a chatbot. So I want to have the process data, and I want to have usage data, and I want to have the outcome data. And technology can help us with all three forms of data, but we still have to design the infrastructure. Okay, kick it over to you, Eve.
Yeah, double click on all of that. It's spot on, right? The volumes of administrative and metadata that one, we have access to, two, that are absolutely inexpensive or free to collect because they're produced just in the product, in the process of a tool being used. It's unbelievable. And the ability to marry those data to the experiential insights, to the impact data, to usage, et cetera. It's amazing. I also think there's a whole new layer of Gen AI analysis tools and coding support practices that are transforming and really democratizing access to analysis and insights. So it's much easier to create outputs that your stakeholders can query, can ask questions of, instead of producing just a flat output that they have to consume, right? It's phenomenal. And I am going to sing the praises of that every day. And the thing I want us to talk about and think about is, you know, these technology tools, and especially on the insights side, it's very easy to generate insights now. You can throw data into a tool and it will spit out statistically significant connections. It will spit out an analysis. But those insights are only as powerful as the context, as the nuance, as the discernment you and your evaluation team bring to it, right? It's meaningless. Like the motor of AI will run irrespective of the quality of the data or the information it has about the universe surrounding those data, where they came from, how they were collected, how they might be biased, et cetera. And so I'm thinking a lot lately about how we ensure that we don't over-index on speed, on ease, on scale, on volume of data to the detriment of context, of depth, and of deep understanding, right?
Mhm.
Because in some ways, these data sets are so large that we need tools. We need AI to help make meaning of the piles of data, right? And therefore, we have to be so intentional about how we design those analyses to make sure that what comes out at the other end is actually meaningful, that it has validity to it.
I just wanted to, I totally agree. And I want to just double down on logic model, theory of action, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, because I am not comfortable with delegating that work to AI. I think we need to really think hard about, what the inputs really are, what are the processes, what are the steps, and is it believable that this led to that? And can we measure
Yeah.
things? I see huge opportunities for AI to be a helper in analysis, but it won't be meaningful if there's not a good logic model at the heart of it.
Absolutely. And even truthfully, as we move more into the world of tech-enabled supports and interventions, what are the measures that we are tuned into for usage? Is it just clicks? Is it driving engagement just for the sake of engagement? Like, product works great if everybody uses it. Or are there more nuanced measures of usage, of engagement, of impact that we need to be attuned to for exactly the reasons that you're raising, Jeremy, which is it in line with the intervention that's been designed and the interim outcomes that we're driving toward?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been exciting to me, but it's a very backstage thing, and I think our audience here is coming from all different places, not just evaluators and researchers. So I just want to describe this backstage thing that when we're looking at learning processes, traditionally, we might go into a classroom with an observation framework. That's probably an example everyone here is super familiar with. And look with our eyes, and every 10 seconds or every minute, code something that we're seeing happen. Um, it turns out in the research world, there's lots of success in having people and AI agree on how to code things like that. And once you get that success called inter-rate reliability, then you can turn the AI loose and it'll do much more of that coding for you. And that is huge because it's so expensive to code these data or to send observers to the field, enormously expensive. So the ability to use AI as an assistant in some of the process of turning information into data, into insight is exciting, and it can be calibrated with people, not turning it loose. And so that's really exciting to me that we have those. And I'm just seeing evidence from the core researchers that we can often get the quality out of that process when we do it right.
I love that example. And I think, at Beyond 12, we've done a couple projects for that little E learning evaluation and learning focus exactly on that. We spent a year having our coaches tag their case notes with the topics covered and having an AI do the exact same thing. And we measured them against each other, and we had the coaches evaluate the assessments of the tool. And only when that was refined, which went through multiple cycles, did we feel really confident that that tool could alleviate clerical burden on coaches and allow them to focus more intently on the conversations they were having with students. And so that was a really tangible amplification of the work of coaching, not replacing human coaches, but instead offloading a sort of administrative task that allowed them to focus more deeply on the thing that really requires human insight, discernment, empathy, which is the work of coaching.
So I want to introduce just something that our CEO of our Project Evidence said to me the other day. She was and I hope I'm not blowing up her spot here. She was upset about the term "human in the loop" because she's like, if in human-centered work, it's just AI in the loop, right? Right. And so that point that you're making, Eve, and I want to bring in the chat a little bit. So Eve and Jeremy, we're coming up on half an hour, but like the chat is actually lighting up with reactions to some of what you are saying, and the questions are layering in. So I'm actually going to start moving us into some Q&A. And then I'm going to back us up to a lightning round that you invited for some of the sort of overall themes. But if it's okay, I want to lift up some of what's going on in the chat, because the sort of opportunity of what you are talking about, you're doing a really great job, both of you, of sort of balancing the opportunity and then what needs to be in place to actually take advantage of that opportunity. I want to focus a little bit on that, not necessarily like how do you mitigate challenges and risks, but we have an invitation to actually talk about what capacity you need to build to be able to leverage some of these tools. So just one quick moment, just looking at what's going on in the chat, like loving the point about being able to get to the how and get to some of these smaller insights along the way. The invitation to like how to think about data coding and analysis to actually layer in the kind of nuance and context and equity that you're talking about. And so a lot of folks riffing with that on the chat. We have one question from the Q&A about. I'm sorry, I lost it for a second. How might both of you reflect on or advise about creating a culture of sort of evidence learning along the way as we have more of these AI tools? Like, how do you build in some of that? Now, Jeremy, you gave us think about logic models, think about theory of change, think about yourself as a model builder. But do you have any reflections on that kind of capacity to well use those tools? Does that make sense? And I want to welcome Marie into the conversation. And Lisa, take care. Thank you so much for being here. Back to you, Eve and Jeremy. The capacity to actually be able to take use of some of these things and be able to use them with the kind of context and nuance that you're talking about.
I mean, I think there's a lot of sorting out to do as I talk to researchers and evaluators. There's a lot of capacity building work and community building work to do, because we're in a time of change. This change from the mode of research being manual, where you hand did everything, to one that you're relying on parts that are automated, even if it's as simple as you're working with a learning platform that's collecting some of the data for you. It's not that easy a change, and it makes the researchers uncomfortable because they didn't design those things, and they're used to a world in which they design it's randomized controlled experiments. That word control was not there for trivial reasons. Researchers and evaluators had a lot of control of exactly what was measured and how. And we're moving to a situation where infrastructure is doing some of the work for us, and it's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a lot of growth and capacity building to do with our research communities.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's spot on. And I think, the word of the hour, for me at least, is discernment, right? And I think the
Mm.
better we can be at identifying what AI-shaped problems are
Mhm.
before we bring in or build AI-guided infrastructure to do the work, the better we will be and the more buy-in there will be, right? Like, is it an AI-shaped problem? Is it something that requires sifting through huge amounts of data, repeating a standardized process, right? Is it about delivering well-defined information that you feed in that needs to be structured in a particular way? Excellent, AI-shaped problem. Is it something that requires context, nuance, discernment, empathy, um, understanding of the human experience? Not an AI-shaped problem, and should not be the place where we are using AI tools to derive insight, right? So the first is it an AI-shaped problem? And then the second is, does it allow humans to do something better than they could do without it, right? If it's
I
even,
don't
I'm not sure it's the right direction. But if it enables researchers, if it enables program leads, program designers to do something better, to have more insight into the work that they're doing to uncover a problem, then the buy-in comes naturally because it has suddenly unlocked a challenge that felt inaccessible or unachievable before. And I think that nuance is really important because, like I said before, you can throw everything at an AI tool and it will spit out something. It might be meaningless, but it will give you something. And so we have to be so careful about when we bring AI to the table and how we deploy it so that what we get out at the end amplifies our work instead of spits out slop.
So you both just answered some questions that had come up from Sarah and from Austin. And I think you've even touched a little bit about a question that came from Roman around how you ensure AI generated insights actually translate into better decisions, not just more analysis. And so
Mhm.
from the both of you, like layering in this discernment, that might be research practice partnership, expertise, how you're building capacity on your team to think about that, that layers up to the two questions, Eve, that were really big for you. One is identify the AI shaped problems. And number two, make sure that the answers that you are seeking allow for humans to do their job better or improve outcomes. All right. So that's, I really, really appreciate that as a sort of a general framework to think about what capacity you may need to build to be able to integrate AI into some of these questions. I want to I want to actually invite, this is a conversation that, you all see, these data inflows coming from technology platforms, but an interesting question from one of our participants, Juliet, about, beyond using AI to support insights from data, what opportunities is AI affording to support practitioners developing more robust assessment in learning environments that do not have a technical and digital component. And right. And so I don't know if that's the whole way back to FedEx boxes, Jeremy, but but how are we actually thinking about leveraging some of the things that you're talking about being possible for folks that aren't just delivering through a digital environment with humans, of course, but primarily through a digital environment.
Yeah.
Any reflections for our friends that are not in digital first organizations?
One of my favorite examples of this is a product called TeachFX, which a teacher uses to record their classroom on an iPhone. And it can transcribe what's happening in that classroom, but also pull out highlight moments. And so one of the insights many teachers have the first time they use TeachFX is, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I talk so much and my students talk so little. But there's much, much more you can dig into with this kind of tool. And it's not about a technology-rich classroom per se. It's about a great classroom discussion. And what are the key moves in my classroom that are opening up students and welcoming them into great discussions? Probing into that can be a really rewarding, I'm going to use what Eve has been talking about, coaching experience for teachers, where they look at how to change their classroom moves and to get students talking more and get the substance of what they're talking about to be more integral to the development of knowledge in that classroom. So it's in one way, it's a pretty light use of technology. Hey, it records and lets you interrogate what you did. But in the other way, it's kind of a deep use of technology because it's making something visible that required a coach to go to the classroom. And it was a painstaking process before to work with classroom videos or classroom audio. So TeachFX excites me.
Friends, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through the entire Q&A. This is really wonderful. Thank you, folks on the line, for like posing great questions to our panelists and just being really engaged with this conversation. Just want to remind us, in about 8 minutes or so, we're going to move into a Hangout and Digital Lounges space. And so if you have a question for Eve or Jeremy, you can find them there. All right. I'm going to ask you two more quick questions and then end with a lightning round, and then we're going to wrap. Thank you so much, by the way, for all of this. So just one question, facilitator's privilege on this one. How do we, we're talking about this big, big E and small E evaluation at the very beginning, evidence. Is there anything that before we wrap that you wanted to say about rigor with evaluation in this context? And you can take that a couple of different directions. Philanthropy's focus on experimental evaluation for making causal inference versus what's useful for practitioners. Are there general reflections that you've been communicating to the field, that just giving you a platform right here for how you think about rigor as it pertains to this type of evidence building?
In a word, measurement of what we really value. For example, right now there's a lot of focus on portrait of a graduate, durable skills. How are we going to measure in the classroom these things? I think measurement remains something we have to double down on if we want rigor. And then there's all the processes of validity. It's one thing to be able to measure it, but another to show that that measure is valid and valid across settings and uses. So a lot of work to be done on measurement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly it. And I think that this moment really calls for us to hone in on rigor and simultaneously identify new methodologies that meet this moment, both this tech-enabled moment and this iterative learning moment. How do we bring some of the strengths of big E evaluation, right? Whether it's RCT or other gold standard methodologies, but balance it with the kind of learning and learning engineering and rapid iteration and pilot testing that brings aliveness to the research and to the programs and value to the programs that we're evaluating or working within. And I think that balance is ripe for reassessment in this moment.
So an invitation to think more carefully about measurement, what we are measuring, how we're measuring, and the balance of rigor and usefulness, and what really changes the game for practitioners. I'm going to move to a lightning round in just one moment, but this Q&A feature allows people to upvote Reddit style on things. And so I'm going to ask one final question from somebody. It brings us a little bit more into the weeds, and then I'm going to bring us back out again. Okay. And so have a question from one of our participants. Unfortunately, I can't see the name here, or I'd call you out. To ask how we ensure that AI is able to robustly and accurately analyze the data, qualitative or quantitative. Is there a way to calibrate insights, verify results? This also picks up some other themes about questioning the tension between speed and transparency. Any final thoughts before we move to the lightning round to give guidance to our audience here? Calibrating insights, creating more transparency with AI tools, either qualitative or quantitative. Verifying results.
I think the answer is that, oh, go ahead, Jeremy, please.
No, it's just absolutely. Look, any high quality research of any kind or evaluation would have cross checks in it. We would never trust a single person to do the analysis with no cross checks, no reanalysis, no publishing. And we need to do all those things. We can't be in such a rush to, and there is a lot of this with AI, like a study comes out and the whole internet lights up. The study has found the answer. AI is great. AI is terrible, whatever. We need to do the scientific process, and we know what that is. That hasn't changed. And absolutely.
Exactly that. Nothing valuable to add.
+1. I love it. +1 from E. Fantastic.
We're agreeing so
folks.
violently.
All right, so folks, we're going to move to a quick lightning round. We have 3 minutes and 11 seconds left, and we came up with some themes. Came in with some themes to our prep conversation, sort of left for some. I'm just going to say a couple of statements. Yes, and them, or no, and them. Okay, so number 1, AI should augment, not replace, traditional evaluation methods. React.
Absolutely. It is a tool, right? Powerful one, but it's just a tool.
Yep. Keep going. I agree.
I love it. All right. Number 2, folks. All right. This is like wait, don't tell me style.
It does sound like wait, don't tell me.
So AI can shift evaluation from episodic reporting to continuous learning.
I think that's it's up to us. It's how we use it is the answer on that. We've always had the potential for both, and AI could help both potentially. You've heard, I think both Eve and I say, we want those insights that are continuous and improvement oriented, not just the thumbs up and thumbs down kind of study. So, but that's, the AI is just a tool again.
Yeah. I do think that there is real opportunity to democratize access to data and to insights that allows people to get what they need more robustly from a range of different stakeholder positions. And that, I think, is a really exciting opportunity.
All right. Build what we want and lean into the opportunity. I appreciate it. Last one. All right. And I'm going to wrap us up. Faster insight only matters if it drives program improvement. Reactions.
We react a little to faster as the goal. Yeah. We started with Big E and Little E, and an unfortunate thing about Big E is it costs a ton of money to get an answer, and only a few people or places, therefore, could win in any given round. I think one of the things we need to look for is the democratizing word here. It's not about faster. It's who are we empowering to get involved in evaluation. And it may take a full school year. That's fine. Happy with it. As long as we're changing who's at the table, who's weighing in, who's benefiting from the evidence.
Agreed. I don't think faster or bigger is the goal. Right.
Democratized is.
Democratized.
From what you said earlier,
more insightful, more actionable, more relevant.
More layered, more rooted in context, more
more explainable, communicable. There's so many goals we could hope for in improving evaluation. I think we're unnecessarily narrowing if we focus on fast, big sheep.
Yep.
Amazing place to end, Eve and Jeremy. Thank you so much. With almost some free association words right to the end, we're going to stick the landing with a humongous thank you to Dr. Eve Shapiro, to Dr. Jeremy Rochelle. Thank you so much, Marie, for being here and helping us out. And I'm going to move us back to the backstage with a huge bit of gratitude. Go find them in the lounges, please. And thank you for all the questions and engagement, team. All right.
Excellent. Great conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you all.